Hello, everybody. My name is Emily Steffen, and we are here to celebrate some Christmas with you. It may seem early because Halloween was just last week, but this whole week we've been celebrating how to make some handmade ornaments, and there's a handful of patterns and inspiration and downloadables and tutorials and live events that you can search through. We will put the link in the comments. You maybe found the landing page already, and that's how you found us here today. But we're super excited. I'm super excited to share the 2 ornaments that I have made. But before I talk about that, I want to just alert you to the chat box that is in the comments or on the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions or any comments or anything you want to add to what I'm talking about or what other people are talking about kind of online, just please make a comment in the comments, make a question in the comments. Just say where you're from or what your favorite thing is about Christmas or what your favorite thing is about this ornament that we're making or anything that you have to say, because I love the community that we can build together during a live event, because that's what half of what crafting is all about to me, is communities and friends, and it's just so great. So Merry early Christmas, happy holidays, all the things, because we're doing handmade holiday ornaments, and I have 2 that I'm very excited to show you. The whole downloadable pattern, along with all the instructions and some of the tips and tricks that I'm going to share today, are in the PDF downloadable, and there will be a link to that in the comments as well. So if you have any questions about the written pattern or what I'm talking about today, comment section is your friend. But I want to show them to you. I first have this super cute huggable, look at his arms open up, and he looks like he's ready to hug you like a Huggable Yeti. There was a suggestion that maybe wire could make him more huggable, which I just love that suggestion, and I feel like I wish I would have thought of that before the pattern was written. And then this is a little Happy Pickle. Look at him. I'm actually, if you can see, doting some pickle earrings that my daughter is like, Mom, she thought this was actually originally a earring, and I'm like, that is enormous earring. So I just then of course made some pickle earrings to match, even though they're not quite Christmassy, but I think they're still really fun. So if you were paying attention to any of the other live events that are a part of this whole series, Brenda on Tuesday, this is so awesome. On Tuesday, Brenda taught us how to crochet a pickle. So if you're feeling like, oh my word, I love this pickle idea, but I'm not much of a sewer, I really feel like crochet is my jam, search through that landing page, because her pattern is on there and it is the cutest little thing in the world. So this is, I guess, my take on the pickle ornament, and she shared a lot of the background in her live event. It's a tradition in Germany where you hide the pickle amongst your Christmas tree. And in fact, she's even making a silver or a white pickle for her, I think, sister or sister-in-law's Christmas tree, so that it can be hidden a lot more easy, because if you have a friend that has a theme tree or something like that, that would be amazing. Or even like a pink pickle for the pink trees, or I think that's so funny. So the idea is that you hide the pickle in the tree, and the first to find it is like the winner of Christmas or something along those lines. I'm not even sure, but I think he's super cute and wonderful. And every year, the reason this idea actually came to me is not because of the German tradition, although I'm very German, but my kids 4 years ago, my family loves vinegar-soaked vegetables, I guess. I don't know, like pickles. And my daughter was a pickle, and my son was the jar of pickles for Halloween. So it's kind of stemmed from that idea, because we love making our Halloween costumes, and Halloween was just last week. And every year, as I'm thinking in my brain to transition from Halloween to Christmas, I've always thought I want to make an ornament that celebrates this sort of like costume thing that my family does at Halloween, because it's a fun thing. My kids are always involved in making the costumes, and we come up with it together. And so I had never made a pickle ornament to correlate with that year, but this is now my pickle ornament to correlate that year. The only thing I need to add is the date that they were the pickle and pickle costume onto the back of my pickle. So just a fun little family thing we do, but that's my inspiration behind the pickle, which I think is really fun. All the Christmas Craft Along series ornaments, there's 14 of them. The link is in the notes here, so browse that, because there's some really fun ones, including Brenda's pickle ornament, not costume. So okay, so I have 2, and I want to start with just showing you the PDF here, but this is the PDF. All the tips and tricks and patterns are here, along with the like actual cuttable pattern, all of my notes, and then the step-by-step sort of instructions. But before we do that, I want to tell you this. One of the things that I feel like I get commented on a lot is I do a lot of hand sewing, and I love hand sewing. If you know anything about me, I hand sew a lot of things because for me, it's just this kind of cathartic, slows me down. I love hand stitching. But I think the trip up for a lot of people with hand stitching is the intricate cutting. And this ornament in particular, the Yeti ornament, has some more intricate cutting, I would say, because his belly, I'm gonna actually get the pattern here. His belly and his hair, I mean, some of these littler pieces feel really intimidating to cut. So I'm really quickly, maybe if you're in that boat, I just wanna give you a couple tips and maybe things that can help you think about cutting fabric a little bit differently. Now, if you are from a sewing household, you know that there's probably this funny little thing that there's fabric scissors and non-fabric scissors. So I have those today. I have my fabric scissors and my non-fabric scissors, and I feel like when I was little, my mom, if I used her fabric scissors on paper, it was like DEFCON 5. It was Bad News Bears. And I remember my mom giving me the look of, did you just use my fabric scissors on paper? Because they dull when you use them on paper, and it's a whole thing. So for this little moment, just set aside your fabric scissors, and I'm just gonna use the very back sheet of this paper here because I wanna show you kind of what I'm talking about. On the back sheet of the downloadable is the lined paper, and I'm just gonna take a pencil right now, and I'm gonna draw a zigzag. Whenever I'm teaching little kids art, I always bring them through what I call like a scissors school or scissors lab. And this is a little bit of it, but don't hear me say that I think that you're at that level. That's not it at all. I just want to give some tips and tricks on how to cut something really intricate. And then I'm going to draw a circle too, just because that's where I'm going to draw. Whenever I'm cutting something intricate, I always cut out the block around it. So in this case, if this is the pattern, I would cut out the pattern circle. I would cut out this and all of the patterns that you have today. There should be enough space around them where you can cut it out in a rough shape first, because I feel like that's, it just works better that way. If you feel like you want to pin your fabric to the paper pattern to the fabric, please do that. But for this demonstration, or this little like tip that I want to give you, I'm just going to use the paper for it. What I want you to do is open your scissors wide when you're cutting. The sharpest part, and maybe somebody can tell me differently, but this is what has always learned from me, that I've worked for me. The sharpest part of your scissors is generally the inside or the tip. The middle is just the middle of the scissors, and it's just like the oomph or the extra. But the sharpest part, if you're needing like super tiny cuts, is the very tip. But if you start at the inside of the scissors, so whenever I teach little kids, I tell them to open up wide like a big alligator mouth. And the way that I want you to start thinking about it is, instead of moving your scissors, I want you to move your paper and your fabric. So what I mean by that is this: rather than doing this and you're moving your scissors, because what happens is I feel like it gets really hard to move your hand and move your elbow and move your wrist in so many different angles that you end up with like little weird cuts in the fabric, or it's not as smooth, or that shape didn't turn out quite right. What I want you to do is this. I want you to think of moving your fabric and your paper instead of your scissors. So my scissors, for the most part, are just going to stay right in front of me. So I want to move this part instead of me moving my scissors hand. And I'm going to demonstrate that. So if I'm cutting a circle, first of all, I'm opening up wide, and I'm inserting on the side, and I'm starting with the side. I'm moving this more than I'm moving my scissors. And it will get you a cleaner cut. Open up wide. A more clean cut, the ability to cut more intricately, and you'll be much happier with it. When you come to the end, like I just went through my whole length of my scissors, open up wide again, and then tuck the fabric or your pattern tightly back into the widest part of your alligator mouth, and keep going. If I were to cut this in a circle and try and move my arm in a circle, it's just my shoulder cannot do that, and it will not work. So hopefully that little trick or that little tip for cutting intricate things will help, or the few tips, because I think the biggest thing that trips people up when it comes to hand sewing is often the intricateness of patterns. So if I were to cut this pattern out, I'm cutting this for the Yeti hair, and then for me to cut this out, I'm moving my pattern and my fabric more than I'm moving my scissors. And this really is demonstrated in this part, so maybe you've heard this before, maybe this is brand new information for you, especially when you're cutting zigzaggies. Move your pattern and your paper more than you move your scissors, with the exception, of course, of opening up your scissors. You will get a much smoother, cleaner cut. You will be less frustrated, especially if you're cutting something thicker or more thick like the felt we're gonna cut today. So, little tip on cutting. Now onto the pattern. I hope that helps you. Maybe, maybe you have other tips. If you have other tips or tricks on cutting intricate things or feeling like some of the little bitty details of the world are tricky to do when it comes to patterns, just please jot it in the comments. Another thing that is possible, and it might be a little bit more tricky for the patterns that we're doing today, but if small intricate cuts are tricky for you, when you print the pattern, just make it bigger. Just make, like when you go to the printer settings, go to like 125% or 150%. That's just maybe another thought for you. So we're gonna start with the Yeti today because he's adorable, and look at, he just has his arms out and he's ready to hug you. Like I said before, I really think adding in some floral wire to his hands so that you can like bend him and make him like really lovable and huggable would be so fun. I am just gonna check on the comments here. We have a handful of people, oh my word, from Egypt and India, that you like my earrings. I'm so glad. So my daughter's comment about them being earrings is, I love that because that's what inspired me to make them. Okay, so the Yeti pattern, you do not have to use these colors. Honestly, I'm a huge proponent of using whatever you have on hand. I love 80-20 felt, which means it's 80% wool and 20% acrylic or polyester or polypropylene, or I think that's how you say that. I could be mistaken on how you say that, because I really like that felt is like that the wool blend felt, like it's more wool than it is the plasticky sort of felt. It's less stretchable, it holds its shape more, it lasts longer, it feels more like an heirloom. That's just my thoughts. If you are only able to get whatever you have at your house, love it. If you're only able to make this out of something that isn't felt, this could potentially work. Just make sure whatever you're using has a non-frayable edge. So any canvas or anything thicker, fleece would be cool. Fleece would be trickier to cut through, but with those new tips and tricks on how to cut, perhaps that would be great. So I have my arms, my horns, my body, and then I have the hair, the face, and the tummy yet to cut out. So I'm just gonna follow my trick that I was telling you, where I'm using my scissors wide, or as wide as I can get them with my hands, trimming off all the extra, and moving this hand, my hand that I'm holding, because I'm a right-handed person, moving my left hand more than my right hand. And it makes a nice clean cut. It's a lot easier. And of course, this maybe goes without saying, but any adjustments or pattern changes that you want to make, please do. This is your Yeti. But I love his hair. That's his hairdo. This was inspired by this little pattern. I was just talking before the show that if anybody has seen the Rudolph, the old school Rudolph show, I think it's like claymation or something, I'm not even sure, but the abominable snowman Yeti guy on there, he's very lovable sort of in kind of plompy like this guy. So I felt like, hey, this is probably a fun, and I've had him doodled on my iPad for a while and just decided, hey, let's turn him into a Christmas ornament because it feels very like a note or a nod to that Rudolph show, the old school one that I remember watching as a kid, which totally just dated me, I realize. But this is probably the hardest one, is the little tummy. And if this is too hard, just make it a circle. You don't have to make these inverse scalloped edges. I just thought it was a nice little burst of a detail. And the thing I absolutely love about felt is this. As you're laying out your pattern, and this is probably true of other fabrics as well, but for me, felt is it's one of my favorite materials to use, is as you're laying it out, it sticks to itself. So it's so much easier to, I feel like, make your pattern. So as I laid out his tummy, I realized, hey, his face was a little bit too big. And because I don't love pinning, because I feel like pins can get in my way, but felt sticks to each other so nicely that I can't say I don't love pinning all the time. Most of the time I don't love pinning, so felt sticks to each other so nicely. And then here's his arms, and I have his horns already cut out. So The first step after cutting everything out is simply to decorate, if you will, like the front of your Yeti. So I'm gonna set my back aside, just my back side of the body aside, and I'm gonna set my arms aside, and I'm gonna set my horns aside. And the first thing I'm gonna do is kind of like deconstruct the face and make sure everything is where you want it to be, because you don't want the face to overlap with the tummy, right? Just move it around, make sure it's everywhere you want it to be, visualize the final product. And then all you're gonna do is, I like to do a whip stitch, which a whip stitch is like a whip. It's like a circle, just a circle stitch. You could do any other stitch that you want to. You could do a flat blanket stitch, which we'll do on the side, but blanket stitches are really cool because it gives like a nice clean edge, and I've seen blanket stitches a flat one that lays flat, and that they're really beautiful as well. I'm choosing white thread, but for the horns, I chose this gold thread because it gets a nice extra set of shimmeries to it. So if you're feeling like you want all of your Yeti to be shimmery, choose whatever you would like. I typically anchor my stitches when I'm hand stitching just by making 2 X's. I don't really use knots that often because I don't ever want the bulk of a knot. So to make 2 X's, all I do is go make an X one way, the other way. And actually with just 1 X, it's pretty sturdy, like I'm pulling, but just because Christmas ornaments get thrown around, I'm making another X, which means all I'm doing is taking my needle and thread and going really gently or really thinly under that layer of the felt and going X, X. That's all I'm doing. And then I will draw my needle towards the front. And for my whip stitch, I like to go front where I'm putting both layers together. And then my down stitch is the one that's just going through the single layer. This is just what works for me. If you have a different way of doing it, please do it. That's the fun of hand stitching, is there's a million ways to do it. To make my stitches even, for me, I like to lay my finger with the depth or the depth, I guess I would say, of the stitch so that it's nice and even. That's where my thumb is, so that I know when I'm poking my needle up through the top, I'm touching the very edge. This is probably a little tricky to see, but I'm touching the very edge of my finger or my nail or my thumb or whatever. Some people use a thimble for this reason, which just goes over the edge of your thumb. I've poked my thumb about 97 zillion times, and I guess I just deal with it, but maybe in this case, because I'm using white fabric, this is probably not the best idea, but that's just what works for me. It helps me get even stitches. Some people, if you're feeling like even stitches are tricky, you can take a piece of paper, or you could take your actual pattern piece, which my pattern piece is here, and you could lay it next to it, and you could make little dash lines on it that are evenly spaced apart, that you could follow your stitches if that helps you. And if you really want to, you could even use a ruler to measure those out so that they're exact. Part of the reason I love hand stitching is the sort of imperfect nature of it. I think can be really beautiful. So all of the details of the front of the Yeti are hand stitched, just like on the front with a whip stitch. That's just how I'm choosing to do it. I'm seeing a ton of comments from people chiming in from where you are. And if you are chiming in from where you are, I would love to hear about any Christmas traditions or any ornament traditions that you have. Because I think the holidays are the most perfect time to have these heirloom moments or these family traditions or favorite things, because I feel like the warmth of the holidays is where it's at in the traditional moments. So, ta-da! I'm not going to do all this for you because the cool thing to me about hand stitching is it takes a while. But all I will do, whoops, his foot is stuck, is whip stitch the head, whip stitch the body, the tummy, if you will, on here, and then I'll whip stitch the hair on. So it'll look like this when all 3 are done. Again, all the steps are in the PDF downloadable if you want the visuals and you want to take time to do this later on. But then, so for after the front is decorated with his hair, his face, and his tummy, The next thing you're gonna do is do the horns and the arms or the hands or the whatever you wanna call these. And I chose to do 2 layers of each when I cut them out, and that's noted in the pattern. So essentially I cut out 4 arms, 2 of each side, 4 horns, 2 of each side, because I wanted them, specifically for the horns, I wanted the horns to have enough strength, if you will, doubling up the felt so that they stand up so that they're not floppy over. And the arms, I wanted them to be stable enough that I know my kids are going to play with this ornament to go open, close, open, close. And I just really like the look of the stitched together felt. So all I did for that is grab some white thread or gold thread or whatever thread you want. And I just blanket stitched the edges. I choose a blanket stitch because I love the way it looks. If you just want to keep doing your whip stitch, please keep doing your whip stitch. Or another thing is, if you have a young stitcher, a young person who's so excited, or a beginning stitcher, and you want to just instruct them or help them just to do one stitch, a whip stitch is like kind of the universal works for almost any application, So when you can nail your whip stitch, you'll be the best stitcher in the land, I think. So again, I'm gonna make my double X's. I choose to part my arms because I don't need to stitch across the top up here, because what essentially I'm going to be doing, and again, this is noted all in the instructions, I'm going to be stitching along the edge of the arm and then leaving my thread open, so I'm not going to cut it, so that when it comes time to attach my arm to the body, I'm going to just put my needle back on the thread of this arm and then stitch across the top of him, the like armpit, I guess, or the shoulder connection. Less armpit, probably more shoulder, and connect it so that it's just one loop around the whole thing. I'm going to show you, that was me just telling you what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to show you quickly how that looks. So I will anchor my stitch by making my 2 X's up here in like the corner of my arm. And I guess the only point of me explaining that is start at the top of your arm. So here's my, whoops, I just pulled it through because I didn't go the other direction. Hello. My one side of my X, my other side of my X, one side, whoops. There we go. Other side. Okay. To start, see, it's really sturdy without even needing a knot. Like you could I don't know, pull a tooth out with how strong that is if you needed to pull your kid's tooth out. To start a blanket stitch, there's a million ways to start a blanket stitch. I'm sure you could Google all the options. This is just how I do it. I like to start my blanket stitch on the bottom. That's just what I like because I feel like I can control the way my thread comes up more than I can control poking through. So I like to bring my needle through to the back and pretend like this is the very beginning. So starting with it on the bottom, it seems redundant, but I will go up through the top and then up through the top. Again, seems redundant for this first stitch, but before I pull my loop, I'm going to put my needle through the loop and make my first blanket stitch. So now I'm ready to keep going on the pattern. So up through the bottom, before I pull my loop, put my needle through and pull it. Again, I'm using the same sort of technique that I did before, where my thumb is holding the depth or the width of the inside of the stitch so that it's as even as it can be, or as even, whoopsies, as I can see it. Whoa, hello, here we go. Needle through the loop. And let me just say, it's quite wonderful to get out some hand stitching and put in a holiday movie or Christmas movie or even your favorite TV show and just listen to it and watch it and stitch. It's so cathartic and so beautiful, in my opinion. So this is an amazing time to get started on holiday ornaments. So before you pull it through, stick your needle through the loop. And what it's doing is, it's kind of like a whip stitch with a little bit of a twist, sort of. Because what it's doing is it's not only stitching it like the whip stitch, but you are creating a finished edge. This is probably hard to see here. You can see it better here. You're creating a finished edge along the edge. So you have your whip stitch kind of, which is going this way, and then you have another stitch that's going this way along the edge. And I love that for finishing layers together, just because I think it looks super finished. And I generally, this project isn't a good example of it, but I generally love to use contrasting thread. And so that's a super cool, it's almost like it looks drawn or doodled when you have a contrasting thread. When you're doing a blanket stitch like this. So, okay, I'm coming up to the top. I also kind of like how fast blanket stitches are. Very satisfying. When I'm coming up to the top, what I was explaining before is if I were all done finishing my Yeti, and I'm just going to demonstrate this, I'm not all done finishing my Yeti, but if I were all done finishing my Yeti, instead of closing the top of this with my blanket stitch right now, what I would do is I'm going to lay this right here and then whip stitch this on, just like this. So I'm doing two things. I'm closing the top or the shoulder armpit area, and I'm attaching it at the same time. So what I didn't want, the reason I'm doing this is because what I didn't want is a duplicate stitch, meaning I didn't want to have to stitch over this area twice right here, because I feel like sometimes that can be really bulky, especially if I wanted it to be really movable like this. I didn't want there to be like a bulk of a thread in his armpits and make him less huggable looking, if that makes any sense. So you obviously could do this any way you wanted to. If you want to close everything up, totally fine. I just feel like it will look a little bit cleaner. So that's all I mean with that. I did the same thing for the horns, where I just cut them out, and there's 4 horns, and I blanket stitched them together. They're a little bit longer because I wanted to give them an option to tuck them out in. So when you're all done, again, this is in the pattern, when you're all done finishing your face and your belly and your arms, you will then start assembling everything together. So I love these claw clips, these guys right here. I feel like, I don't know what they're really called. I call them claw clips because they're like lobster claws, like they just clip. They don't poke or puncture the fabric, which I really like. So all you would do is lay it all together and then clip around the edges to do your finished blanket stitch around the edges. In the pattern, I just want to feel like I want to note this. In the pattern that is in the downloadable, there is the eyes and the smile. If you look at mine, I don't have the eyes and the smile stitched on because I felt like I drew it up and I liked it, and then I didn't like it, and I liked it and didn't like it. But ultimately, I decided that I wanted to add the 2 bead eyes, or maybe sometimes if you go to like the a craft store, they have the twisty sewn-in eyes. I don't even know, or twisty doll. I think they're called doll eyes, and they can be black, or they can have pupils, or they can be colored eyes. Anything, of course, would work. These are honestly just these black beads. They're 6mm glass beads that I got at Michael's because that's what I could find. So I'm going to move on to the pickle because the other finishing details that are applicable to this are also applicable to this, but I want to give the variations between the two. So any questions that you come up with for the Yeti, please make a comment because I would love to answer those live if possible. Because I don't want to leave you hanging. Some of these Christmas tradition comments are coming in. I love the matching jammies. We do the same thing. Same, right? And I love, Erica says that her family does an ornament exchange on Thanksgiving. They each bring a wrapped ornament and play a game to exchange them. In the game, they unwrap them and steal them. So it's like a white elephant, but with amazing things. I would feel like an ornament would be really fun. And then they have a new ornament for their Christmas tree. That is really fun. And that is really fun, especially if you make something, because I feel like in our family, anything that's handmade is always, generally more coveted than something that isn't. So that would be a really fun variation, I think. I like that idea. That'd be fun to do with friends. I've never been on the ornament exchange train, and now you saying this, I'm like, yeah, this is a really awesome idea, because I never actually buy ornaments for myself. I'll buy them for my kids or something, but who doesn't love a good ornament, a new ornament every year? I love that. Okay, setting my Yeti aside and onto our pickle. So I've prepped a lot of the pickle just because the pickle is just like a teeny bit tedious. with the pickle veins. So if you look at the pattern, you will see, I'm actually going to show my pattern here because I cut up the other one. If you look at the pattern, you will see that there are lines on the pattern. And every time, I'm just going to say this, every time I make a pattern, it always looks, it looks enormous, right? Compared to the finished pickle, it looks enormous. But actually, it's just because it needs room to be stuffed. So don't be alarmed that the pickle shape is really big. It alarmed me too when I made it and then adjusted it and made it again. I'm like, this pickle looks really big, but this is the size it turns out, and it's smaller than my hand. So it is a good size in my opinion. Or maybe you want to make it smaller because you really want to hide it in your Christmas tree like Brenda was talking about. I'm unsure. Do your thing. But there's 3 lines on here because I think the thing that makes a pickle not just a cucumber is obviously the fact that it's soaked in vinegar and it gets wrinkly and the texture is there. So I kind of solved the problem of adding the texture in 2 ways. One, these vein details, or the 3 sort of sections, if you will, I decided to cut out some scraps of felt and sew them on. And then I also added these beads. They're just these glass green beads, nothing fancy. I don't know what they're called. They are called Czech seed beads. So I got them at the fabric store, or at the craft store. And I'm sure if you didn't want to use those, you don't have to. And I also thought, before I could find those, I also thought gold sequins would be really good, because anything just to add like the variation that looks like it could grab light or make it look more 3-dimensional or have not a smooth, perfect surface like the Yeti has, because I mean, this is just like a smooth surface. So anything you can add on here, or maybe you just want to hot glue something on there, perfect. This one, this ornament, this pattern, I think is a little bit more adaptable in the way of, if you do not want to hand stitch all of it, you 155% could just use felt and fabric glue and glue most of it together with the exception of the outside stitching. Honest, like 100% honestly. You probably couldn't do that with this one simply because of the arms, but if you didn't make the arms, it's an option to not hand stitch it, but this one is a lot more, hey, I don't like to hand stitch friendly. So what I mean by adding these vein details, and these can be sewn in, which I will show you, or they can be glued on, is all these extra scraps that I have from cutting out my pickle, don't throw them away, because I want to try and mimic these 3 lines. Now you'll also notice I adapted this a little bit because I decided to add a face. So this middle line, this top chunk I did not include. So my middle section is a little bit smaller. I don't know if it's probably a little hard to see. But all I do, and this is like a, hey, rough estimate with your eyeballs moment, and if you make a mistake, just cut it again moment. But all I'm going to do is take my scrap and sort of cut a sliver. It does not have to be perfect. In fact, it doesn't even have to be close to perfect or remotely even thought about that. This, I don't really love the bulky bottom, but I'm adding 2 of the little vein details on each section. So 2, 2, and 2. So I will maybe grab another little sliver over here, and it's like you're cutting a little this shape. Like it's skinnier at the top, skinnier at the bottom, and then I'm just gonna kind of lay it on to just add dimension, texture, and the little bit of like the wrinkly pickleness. So again, I love felt because you can lay it on here and you don't have to pin it. It's not probably gonna go anywhere. Probably is, I guess, the key word here. I want my lines, just like the pattern, to go in the direction of the outside of I guess the outside lines of the pickle, because I want it to look like, you know, it goes in the movement of the pickle. So what I am gonna do though is move this guy over because my fingers are too fat that I can't pick it up. So I'll use my pin. There we go, that's what I want. Just like that. So all I'm gonna do, and this is why gluing it on could work really well, but I will make my X, whoopsies, and I pulled it all the way through. One way, other way, back through the first way, back through the second way to anchor my stitch. And all I'm gonna do is like hold it on, and I'm gonna make little tiny whip stitches all the way up in little spots to just make it attached, but not completely fully flat attached like the Yeti is. So I will come up through the bottom and go back down over it. And my goal is just to make sure that the wrinkly areas, this texture stays on. It's not to be perfect. It's not even, quite frankly, my goal personally is to have super even stitches, because to me, the cool thing about a pickle is that they're very different and they're yummy and they're green, and then this guy is a happy pickle. So this part might be the most tedious just because you kind of have to wiggle it into place as you're stitching. But I'm just going up through the bottom, down. I love the comment. I want to make this exclamation point. Good. I hope this is inspiring. Up through the bottom and down. And as I'm stitching these on, the cool thing also about felt is if your shape isn't perfect, you can stretch and move felt more than any other material, I think. And I'm just going on either side. It almost looks like, you know, when you look at a birch tree and there's like, or if you were to draw a birch tree or you've seen a birch tree painted or drawn, you know how the tree is white and you have little dashes or flecks or horizontal lines coming in from the side, in from the side, in from the side. That's exactly what this is it almost looks like I have just like these horizontal lines on either side coming from the side to the middle, from the side to the middle, from the side to the middle, so on and so forth. I'm just working my way to the top here. I'm a huge fan of patterns that don't need to be perfect, and this one certainly doesn't need to be perfect. I also really like this felt that I happen to have lying around because it's not solid green. Again, a plug for not for wool blend felt, because it has variegatedness or variation in it with a little bit of yellowy. I don't know if that is picking up on camera for you to see it, but yes. Okay, I'm almost to the top. But as you're stitching, the cool thing that I also love about hand stitching is if you were to give anything that you make as a gift, I love as I'm hand stitching, if I know this is for somebody else, thinking about them, wondering if they're gonna like it, wondering how they're gonna use it, wondering if, just thinking about them and your relationship with the person, or how much they mean to you, or what they've done for you, or your kids, or your family, or whatever. So that's the other cool thing for me, is that hand stitching slows me down in my chaotic and wild life. Maybe that's why I'm drawn to it so much. Okay. We're almost done. But okay, do you see how it's kind of just like the wrinkles. The wrinkles on the pickle. That's what I'm gonna call it, the wrinkles. The vinegar residue. Okay, this is exactly how I want it to be. Now, before I cut my thread, here's a tip, and maybe you will agree with me and maybe you will not in this. Okay, what I like to do is, rather than anchoring my stitch, cutting it, and then re-anchoring my stitch again, this is what I like to do. I like to, you can see I did that already right here if you're looking closely. I like to just do one quick X as like a mini anchor, and then I'm gonna just continue on, because sometimes I just wanna keep using the same thread, keep using the same needle that I'm using, and not bother about it. So to add my eyeballs, I'm gonna show you how to add my eyeballs. I intentionally stopped with one of my ribs, or my texture, up here, because then I could add my eyeballs. So to add them, since these are not like the actual eyeballs from like the craft area that are meant to be eyeballs, what these are just, oh, I grabbed the end, hang on. These are just the like beads, they're 6mm beads. So if you want to buy them, they are just 6mm black glass beads. And they're very eyeball-y because they're shiny. There was dull ones, matte ones, and I got the shiny ones. So because they're beads, they do have the holes on either side of them. So I just want to make sure that my holes are not facing forward, obviously because I need to get my thread through it, but more than that, I just want to make sure they were just like a nice black, cute circle as if I were to doodle them. So I sometimes will want to lay them out, right? That looks pretty cute. Whenever you're making something stuffed, know that you are going to lose a bit of your edge to the dimension of what you're stuffing. So you do not want to put your eyeballs way out here because they will end up on the side of your pickle. So you want them more middle-ish, but I also want to keep them wide. So I would say, I don't know, something like that, up against my rib. So here's how I'm going to do that. I will go, that's about there. I'm going to go up, thread my eyeball, which is my glass bead, and then I'm going to go down almost right next to where I went up because I want my eyeball to sit nice and flush and I want my holes to be on the sides, if that makes sense. So this always the first stitch I have to reposition it because the bead wants to spin to make the holes wonky. And then I'll go up again through my bead. And then you're almost going back down, almost like underneath where the bead is. And I'll do this like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. And after the second time, I almost don't have to like monkey with it anymore because it stays pretty flat. There is an argument that sometimes when you're adding beads onto something, and maybe if you are a real beader, you can chime in, please, because I don't know if this is true or not. This is just what I've been told, that if you're a real beader, I think I'm going to say this right, you should go up this way twice, and then you should go backwards once because I don't know, maybe it's the same as anchoring a stitch. I don't know what the thought is behind that. I'm not doing that. But maybe if you are a real beader and you actually do hand beading a lot, maybe there's truth to that. I'm unsure. But if you feel like that works better, ta-da, there's his eyeball. So under each one of the eyeballs, I will do an X anchor stitch just because in the haste of Christmas, and my kids help me take Christmas decorations down and whatever, if an eyeball pops off, I don't want it to pop off both eyeballs. I'd rather it just pop off one. Because once this is stuffed, I don't know that I really want to deal with it and try and get 2 eyeballs on. Again, I'll just move my thread right over because I just am not going to want to anchor that as well. My other eyeball will go here, roughly. Thread the bead. Oh, Nora, I love that you're saying that you like the glass beads for eyes. I've never made, I've made my daughter a handmade doll once, and I just painted the eyes on the muslin face fabric. So when it came time to add a face, I was like, I don't actually know where to buy eyeball beads. And some of the eyeballs to me just didn't have the same feel or like whimsy or quirkiness as just like a cute black little eyeball. So I'm glad these beads worked out. I stood in the bead aisle for a solid 20 minutes trying to figure out what size. And they, like I said, they had matte and they had shiny, and I'd highly recommend getting the shiny because it reflects back almost like like the catch light or the pupil in your eye. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you a few other things, just tips and tricks for this guy. And after my eyeballs are on, I will do my mouth, which is optional. And then I wanna show you how to bead it, how I add my bead details. Okay, again, I'm anchoring it really quickly. And before I do anything else, I want to, where's my marker? Here it is. You can use a pencil or you can use a fabric marker. And before I do anything else, I want to add where my smile is going to be. And maybe you don't want to smile at all. This guy's just going to have a little bit of a like very exaggerated rainbow smile. Embroidering it on is always a fun idea. You don't have to. It's just a normal running stitch, I think it's called. I don't know that to be true. I should know the name of it. But let me show you how I do it really quickly. If I can get my yarn. And if you look really closely, I actually don't have black embroidery floss because I didn't have any in my house. This is variegated. So this is like gray to white to black. So I'm just going to find the black section on here or the dark gray section on here. And that's what I'm going to use because I could not find big embroidery floss. at my house because I don't know where black embroidery floss is. I know I had some. Story of everybody's craft room, right? Oh, I love, Nora, that you said that the glass beads make them dimensional. That's exactly what I was thinking when I was standing in the bead aisle. So again, any embroiderers can chime in on how you would do this differently, but I just anchor my stitch like normal, which it is thicker thread. So just be careful that you're not anchoring it so that you can see it on the front. And if you need to check that, you can. But all I do, and I'm gonna leave this to the side because I'm gonna use this for adding my beading, but all I do is where I drew my smile on, I will come up and go back down along the edge. Essentially, I'm going to, this is called back stitching because I will go up and down and then I'll skip and go up and back and go up and back and go up and back and up and back. So I'm gonna go up here and then go backwards into the previous hole, the second from previous hole, and then go up. I'm stuck on the back. Embroidery floss can be really thick. Oftentimes embroidery artists will separate the threads. I didn't want to do that because I wanted my smile to be as obvious as possible because he is a little happy pickle. Okay, so 5 stitches, that's all that was, just 5 little stitches to give him his little smile. And then I will anchor this. And then move on to the beading, which I will show you quickly. Oh, okay. And if you don't want to add a smile, you don't have to add a smile. Or if you'd rather use puff paint to put it on, or maybe you'd rather use literally a Sharpie or a marker, just be careful that sometimes Sharpies or markers will bleed into your fabric. So if you are using felt or something, or fleece, I don't know that it would bleed as much, but felt sometimes can, because it can take on the moisture of the juice of the marker, if you will. Okay, so I'm adding my beading, and I'm just going to show you really quickly how I do that. Then we will finish up our pickle. I'll show you how I add the tie. But for beading, first of all, beads fly everywhere. I feel like anytime I use them, they're like rolling off the table. So I probably should have a better system on where my beads go. But I wanted my beads to mainly be going in the same direction as the pickle. I didn't really want them to be horizontal to the vertical-ish pickle. So they're wonky, some of them are wonky, and I just wanted to space them out, again, understanding that the dimension of the pickle, the like fill or the dimension, I didn't want to put them right on the edge, but I did want them scattered throughout. And I also did put them on the back as well. So we'll put one here, go up, bead your bead, and then go back down. It's so simple, so simple. Go up, bead your bead, or put your thread through your bead, and then go back down. Where you go up and down, that's the direction of where your long bead will be. If you choose to use sequins, you will need like another little glass bead. I've shown this on other lives in the past as well. But I love hand beading in ways as well. Probably the same reason why I love hand stitching, because it's so therapeutic and you see it live in front of you and it just comes together and it makes you slow down. So if you're using sequins though, you will go up your fabric, up your felt with your needle and your thread. You'll bead on the sequin, then another bead, and then go back through the whole of the sequin, because that bead, in theory, your thread will loop and hold it together, because you don't want to have thread going over top of the sequin, because the sequin is a disc as opposed to this just being a long bead. So all I will do for all of my pickle is add, see, they roll away, all of my beading details in kind of, wonky, happy, little pickly, sparkly, this is gonna shine on the Christmas tree sort of way. I'm sure there's like a beading tray or something that I could get that I just don't have. But both of the ornaments, whether it's the pickle or the Yeti, you're decorating the front of the ornament After you're done decorating, you will add your back, use your claw clips to clip it together. And then the last thing that I like to do before you stuff it is add your hanger. I like to add the hanger into the actual ornament itself because I feel like it hangs nice and flat. If you notice also, they're almost like staggered the way that the hangers are, because I'm gonna just show you. And you don't even have to do it like this. This is just how I do it. If I cut my shimmery gold thread and I put it over top of each other, like just lay it like this, and I were to hang it on a Christmas tree, I feel like sometimes they tend to lay sideways. When they're on the Christmas tree, they tend to lay like that. But I've found if I hang it on the Christmas tree, and maybe it's opposite for you, maybe it's just the kind of tree we get and the way we hang our ornaments, or that I have kids doing it, I'm not sure. But I've found if I stagger them and lay them flat like this, where I'm moving over the top, it lays better for me. I don't know that to be like, oh my gosh, this is science, but that's what works. So as I am doing my blanket stitch around the edge, when I'm getting near the top, I will simply add my string in. You could use baker's twine, you could use yarn, you could use this is just a ribbon. I don't even know where it came from, but just a ribbon. You can use more embroidery floss. You could make something very magical and like, I don't know, macrame something. But all I do is incorporate my hanger then in my stitching across the outside, so that you have just, it's kind of all nice included in one. So that's the overview and the tips and tricks that we have for these two ornaments. And honestly, if you are feeling like you're a part of an ornament exchange or you're getting ready for the holidays, I highly encourage you to check out the landing pages from all of the patterns. There's 14 different Christmas patterns to make all these different ornaments, and some of them are sewn, some of them are crocheted, some of them are stitched, some of them are sewn on a sewing machine, because the sky is the limit, I feel like, when you get to decorate your Christmas tree. And if you're anything like our family, these quirky little ornaments, I feel like make your tree come to life and have personality. And even if you feel like you have a color theme or an idea theme, like Brenda's sister's pickle that she's making, make it in the color that would fit. There's nothing against having a pink pickle or a red pickle or a purple pickle or a pink Yeti or I don't know. So I just highly encourage you to slow down this holiday season and make some of these Christmas ornaments for yourself or for gifting for your friends, or even just little stocking stuffers, because I think crafting this holiday season is going to make your holiday season a lot more bright and fun, especially if it's paired with a good movie. So thank you so much for joining us today. Again, the patterns can be found at the link on the landing page, but I hope that you enjoyed the tips and tricks and all of our little holiday cheer that I hope to share and inspiration for this holiday season as we stitch together. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.